In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to build a life worth living. This is going to be part 1 of a 5-part mini-series where we are going to help you course correct and start to create a happier, more purpose-filled life. So grab your cup of coffee and get ready to dive in as we share with you these 3 key elements to creating a life worth living.
Coffee with MoJo in the morning.
Hey, you're here. Thanks for joining us. You might have noticed something a little different.
You can't see us. Where did we go? Are we here? Are we there?
Okay, so let's get really real with you before we dive into this 5-part mini-series. First of all, I am so stoked to be bringing this content to you because this is something that Jovan has crafted, and I'm really excited to dive into the conversation because I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of aha moments to uncover. But Jovan and I had a real come to Jesus moment during our last filming session, and we just kind of realized that we want to try a different approach. So I hope that you will hang with us here, and I hope that you will enjoy the fact that we are now just going to shift to podcast, so it'll be a little bit easier for you to tune in and listen on the go.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm excited to talk about these 3 elements. You?
Yeah.
Ready?
Kick us off, Joe.
Okay, so something that I've kind of discovered in life in my 36 years is that there's 3 things that I really think are essential when you're trying to live a good life, or you're trying to pursue something, or you're just trying to live a life that feels more fulfilled. And those 3 things are: 1, you can't have debt; 2, you got to know what your purpose is or what it is you want to do out of life; and 3, you got to help others do the same.
So I'm just going to be really vulnerable with you for a minute. At the beginning of this year, Jovan and I, we'd been married 10 years, and I think for me personally, I just started taking a little bit of an emotional inventory, looking back as far as how far we've come together as a couple, as individuals, and then also looking forward to saying where I want the next 10 years to go. And the one thing that I'd recognized that we had lost sight of was setting collaborative goals as a family, as a marriage. And so this 5-part series is inspired through some of that pain and frustration, if you will, because Jovan and I have been doing the inner work necessary to strengthen our marriage and to get back on track. And so what we've come up with just in the most recent months was that these were 3 areas of our lives that we wanted to sharpen.
Yeah, in fact, these 3 particular areas, once we started to give attention to them, things just started to just feel and just be a whole lot better. In marriages, a huge problem is finances. There's several problems that can arise in a marriage, but it's always finances, and a lot of divorces usually are caused and end in financial problems. So,
in fact, fun fact, not so fun, but Jovan and I, we actually eloped at the courthouse in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. This was in 2009. And the moment we left the courthouse, we get in the car and the radio was on. And the very first thing it said, right after we said, "I will be committed to you for the rest of our lives," the radio said, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And I was like, wah, wah.
And there are many factors for that, but one in particular is finances. I remember being an Army chaplain and having soldiers come in the office all the time with their spouses, and my chaplain and I would be talking with them, and the thing they always brought up was bad spending habits, debt, up to their eyeballs, not knowing how they're going to put food on the table and put diapers on little Timmy because, they've mismanaged their money. So I realized that in pursuit of a better, more fulfilled life is you cannot have debt. You can't have debt. Whether you buy into the Bible's ideologies or not, there's something that the Bible says, and a lot of religious books say, a lot of them. It always talks about people who borrow are always slaves to the lender. There's always going to be a burden anytime you borrow money, or you have debt, or you owe somebody something. So the key is to not have that energy. It's really an energy that kind of sits around you when you owe somebody. It's always in the back of your head that you owe somebody and you have to hurry up and pay this off. And it's just this thing you can't quite take care of. So I would say the first thing that needs to be tackled is getting out of debt. How you get out of debt, we're going to talk about in subsequent episodes, but it is absolutely critical that you get out of debt before you spring forward and do anything else.
It is absolutely critical. You know, I worked as a certified financial advisor at USAA, and my role was to help people build wealth. And then I'd get on these calls time after time with these individuals, and they'd be saying, you know, oh, my spouse is bringing in $400,000 and I'm bringing in $250,000, and we have this house and we've got this boat. And from the outside, it looks like, wow, they're really wealthy. But when we crunched the numbers, they were so upside down in debt. And I was just like, I had an aha moment. I think at that time, I mean, this is like years ago, but I think at that time, you and I might have been $12,000 in debt-ish, probably. It's hard to say, but we had a little chunk of change that we owed back to our credit card companies. And I just remember coming home and being like, we can't do this. Like, what's the point in striving towards achieving 6 figures a year and not being able to actually invest the way we want to invest? So I remember that was like the first time you and I both got super serious about putting a plan together and getting out of debt.
I know Dave Ramsey says this. He's like, when you don't have payments, you know what you're left with?
Money.
And the reason why I say that is because it segues into my next point, which is identifying your purpose and pursuing it. Because a lot of times when you want to pursue something that you desire to do, whether your purpose is to travel, you can't travel without money. I mean, even if you get like a free hookup somehow, you're going to have to buy food.
It always ends up costing more than you think.
It always ends up costing something. So when you don't have debt payments to make, you have money. So now you can travel. Now you can have capital to pursue the thing that you always wanted to pursue, without having to worry about like, where is the money going to come from? I can never become this. I can never start this business because I don't have the money, you know? Or I can't take this class because I don't have the extra funds to take piano lessons if playing piano is something you've always wanted to do.
Now, yeah, you bring up a good point, but the first thing you have to do is identify your purpose. And I remember when I was working in corporate America, I thought, well, I was pretty proud of myself that I had that job title. I thought it was important. I thought I was making a difference. But I'd soon kind of fallen into a depression and then thought, like, what do I really want from my life? And I didn't know what my purpose was. And I know at that time, I hope you don't mind that I lump you in this, but I think both of us were very much into material things. And we were just racking up credit card debt because we were trying to find like that happiness or through that creative expression of purchasing versus really identifying what our core purpose is and then being able to use those funds to then fuel that creative that we really wanted to bring into the world. Thank goodness, fast forward how many years now, and I'm really proud of us, actually. We both do that in our individual curiosities.
You couldn't have said it better. The whole point of getting out of debt is because it creates freedom. Basically, you can say the super objective of all three of these points is to have a life that feels more free, because we feel like we're trapped to our 9-to-5, and we feel like we're in our 9-to-5 because we have to make our car payment or we have to make some sort of payments. But if you don't have payments to make outside of a place to stay, you find that you have a lot more freedom. Perhaps you don't have to work those extra hours because you don't have debt to pay off. So now those extra hours can go to living a more fulfilled life.
And to live a fulfilled life, I remember when I started asking those questions of, what is my purpose? What am I meant to do here? I did not know where to turn. I remember asking every single person in my social sphere. Nobody had the answer. I called my mom. She had no clue. I ended up doing a Google search and through this church organization taking this online quiz. And it was so vague that I was lost for so long. And it was through a lot of trial and error through my own experience that I finally landed on my core purpose. But what I wanted to share was that thankfully, Jovan and we actually just wrapped a course where we teach you step by step how to identify your purpose so that you kind of get the fast track and you don't have to go through all of those years of frustration like we did to identify our core purposes. You can literally just watch a few master classes and do some workbooks that Jovan and I created inside of the Legacy Leaders Academy to help you find your purpose.
And the cool thing about the Legacy Leaders Academy is primarily it's a leadership course. So we're trying to teach you to ultimately take lead in your life, because life is a stage and you're either an extra or you're the lead. So we're trying to teach you to take charge of your life. And one of the things we talk about is, acquiring knowledge and acquiring expertise from others, which is going to segue me into my final point, which is helping others do the same. You're going to find that when you're pursuing your purpose, and now that you're out of debt and you're living life on your own terms, you're going to be learning from people, other mentors, you're going to be picking up knowledge from books. But this is now an opportunity for you to find an opportunity to give back to somebody else. I have read a study recently that says that there is more enjoyment in people giving to people than actually receiving. They did like a little study. It was like they gave somebody $20, right? They gave a couple people $20 and told them to just go spend it. And then they asked them, how do you feel after you spent it? And they're like, whatever, I spent $20. But then they said, we're going to give you another $20 and I want you to find people to give it to and share it with people. So people would buy somebody a cup of coffee or a meal, or they would sit there and have a meal together and share it with people. And then they would come back and go, how do you feel? They're like, oh, I felt great. I got to give somebody some coffee, gave a homeless dude a little bit of change. I just felt good, because ultimately we aren't on this earth to just serve ourselves. We're here to serve each other. So to wrap it up, to wrap up, like, the reason why you need to have a full life, the things that are required in a full life is you have to be able to give to other people, and you got to be able to help other people, because there's no fulfillment in just serving yourself, because what's the point of having everything you've ever wanted and having nothing,
no one to share
it with, or reaching a pinnacle of success and not giving somebody else a leg up so they can realize their vision as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you absolutely must be in a position where you're striving to help others do the same. And to just piggyback on something you had said a few minutes ago, one, you have to acquire specialized knowledge, meaning going out there and learning from the people who have done the thing that you're wanting to do. And then you have to implement it and accumulate knowledge through the actual action of doing. And so while you're learning, the best way to actually really learn is to teach and to go out there and help others. So I really love that point, and I definitely think that it is one of the key building blocks to building a life worth living.
And in the next class, we're going to talk about getting out of debt much more in depth. And in every subsequent class, we're going to cover each individual point. We're going to cover what it looks like to identify and pursue your purpose. And then we're going to cover what it looks like to help somebody else do the same, and how to just be giving a lending hand and show up in this world as somebody who contributes and doesn't take so much. I'm looking forward to this series because it's very, very easy to do, which makes it very, very simple, very, very difficult to follow up with. When you think about what do you have to do to get in shape? Work out and eat good.
Eat right, drink water.
Yeah, and the steps are so simple, but because they're so simple, it's so hard to keep up with because they're so simple. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a catch-22 type deal. But if you stick with us, I ensure you that you're going to see the simplicity of this, and you're going to be able to take steps from where you are to live a life that just feels more empowering and feels more free, because ultimately it's about freedom.
It is about freedom, and to help you get one step closer to that, I actually created a success worksheet that goes along with this episode. Then you can download that over at coffeewithmojo.com, episode 74. And so go grab that, download it, get to work, and then tell us what you thought of it inside of the MoJo Insiders Room.
So until next time, remember, master your mind and live your legacy, and we'll see you around here at the same time next week.